Evening, everyone. Welcome to the September 17th, 2024 meeting of the Concord Planning Board. Since we are in person, we do not need a roll call vote to get started. So our first item of business is the public hearing for Blue Mercury Inc. for a special permit under sections 3.3 and 11.6 of the zoning bylaw to establish a new formula business retail store in Concord Center at 4 Walden Street, parcel number 0832. And with that, I'll turn it over to, I guess, the applicant.
Good evening. Mark Fabrowski, my office is in Damon Mill. I'm representing Blue Mercury with regard to the application tonight. This is a pretty simple, straightforward retail to retail transition. I represent Linear Property as well, the landlord for the property. And this is something that Fat Face has been there probably about a year now. They were the 12th formula business to come downtown. 12 is the maximum number allowed with their departure. And there was a question in your notes and the planner's report. Well, what happened to Fat Face? Let's just call it discontinued at this location. I know that they have a number of cities and towns across the state, if not the country. So they're out of that space. So it's retail to retail. Blue Mercury is a women's cosmetic spa oriented business, and I'll let the representatives of the company describe the business for you so you have a bit of a feel for what they're going to be doing there.
Yeah, I'm Angela Bertolino. I'm the real estate director for Blue Mercury. Blue Mercury is your beauty expert in both skincare and color makeup. We are neighborhood based, so we have a fleet of approximately 180 stores, all in neighborhoods around the country and in the most coveted neighborhoods around the country. So we really work to go where our guest lives and be that resource for them, both men and women, in all of their skincare and beauty needs.
And will you be, what will be the nature of the business? Purely retail?
Purely retail.
Okay.
Yep.
Just to make sure that there's no misunderstanding, there's not going to be, other than, demonstrations of a product, I would assume.
Yeah.
Any kind of treatment.
No, that's correct. There will be no spa associated with it.
Great. So, we're due tomorrow night at the Historic District Commission for the signage. And it's a pretty, again, a simple trade out of Fat Face for a like sign that just says Blue Mercury on it. I saw their report today. They don't seem to have any objections to it. So happy to answer any questions about I'm sure you've all read the planner's report and you understand that it's a relatively small store. Anxious to move into the neighborhood. I've already told them that they're expected to bring their wallets down there every Saturday to help downtown survive, and they've agreed. So.
The only thing I have is was a comment regarding a number of employees and full-time, part-time, and number of shifts, and then one member provided comments about whether employees will also be encouraged to use alternative modes of transportation, and what, if any, exterior changes in the lighting or interior changes in the lighting that could spill onto the exterior.
So I reached out to Lily Goodson, who responded by saying the following. First, they don't expect deliveries to be more than an occasional UPX or FedEx truck. There's not going to be a big box truck arriving on the premises, so that's pretty easy to wrestle with. The number of full-time employees will be 2 to 4 on the site. They typically will arrive around 9:30, 10 in the morning and leave at closing time. It's not typical for people to stay after closing time. What's closing time,
We would align with whatever the downtown,
Yeah, it's
so that we'd be consistent with
whatever the regular standard hours. are.
You know, it's.
I would assume 10 to 6 or 7,
Yeah, something.
something along those lines.
With regard to the lighting, we were talking about this because you saw it in your report. We don't expect there to be any change in lighting, and we don't expect there to be lighting impacts from the building onto the street. With regard to the alternative means of transportation, happy to accept that as a condition. And they'll endeavor to tell their employees to ride bicycles or otherwise to get to the downtown. Knowing that parking is at a premium, we understand that. If there's I saw something in the report that you didn't necessarily want to see people taking up on-street parking spaces, so if they can get to the Kai Street lot or the some other lot, I'm used to that. We had this discussion when Cafe Nero came in, and I think that's not proved to be any kind of a detriment to the downtown. This will be a lot less than that, that's for sure. Happy to answer any other questions.
Yeah, so I guess I'll just open it up to the board if they have any specific questions regarding the application or any concerns beyond what's been written and addressed, I guess, on the applicant. I
Well,
personally.
I want to know that we got a comment from a member of the public, objecting to the way the nature of the business would fit into the downtown, but as far as I can tell, it satisfies the rules of the formula business bylaw and does not exceed the cap. So I don't believe we have any grounds that ground is relevant.
I mean, I'll be frank, I find this challenging because I think that our prior application of the formula business special permit rules has been a little bit toothless. In that I do think we have, there's some language that gives the planning board some discretion about, will it safeguard Concord's historical relevance? Will tourists and residents continue to have unique dining, retail, and service experience in its village centers? The reason this was passed by, town meeting was that, we were concerned about preserving, and this language is in the bylaw, the distinctive small town character. And, we've seen this with proliferation of, real estate offices and things like that. It becomes very difficult for small independent businesses to compete for retail space when they are up against a large national chain that can agree to lease terms that are just fundamentally different than what an independent business can. And there's times at which, and the bylaw contemplates this, that those concerns are outweighed by the benefit to the community. We talk about this with exceptions made for, banks and grocery stores and things that, are provide service at scale and kind of need to. And there's instances like Cafe Nero where, we for a while struggled to have kind of quick service food options in town. We have a high tourist population. We needed places where, cyclists and leaf peepers could get coffee and a sandwich, and, our local businesses were a little overrun. The reality is that, Blue Mercury is a wholly owned subsidiary of Macy's, which is a multi-billion-dollar company. They're expanding rapidly, 30 new stores in the next 3 years. Their CEO has given an interview very explicitly stating that they target wealthy suburban areas, and one of the goals is that their retail locations drive online sales. So this is essentially, it functions as a billboard. It's not, this isn't a small mom and pop made good, that has has 15 or 20 locations. This is a large, national chain coming in, and it's providing, do we think that service and that benefit outweighs kind of the detriment? Well, their top 10 selling products include things like $250 face cream and $500 fragrance and things along those lines. So I don't see kind of the benefit to the broader community other than the employment, which I would imagine any retail space would provide a similar level of employment. And there are lots of businesses, lots of small independent businesses that would covet that location, even other existing businesses in town. It's a great spot. Linear has done a fantastic job rehabbing the building. I don't deny that. It's a beautiful space. It's highly visible. I can completely understand why Blue Mercury would want to move into that space. I would like to see the formula business bylaw applied with a little bit more teeth. In that I think there are instances where formula businesses are an asset to the community. And I think there are instances where they are a detriment. And in my mind, my concerns about this don't, they're just not outweighed by the benefits to the community. I would not vote to approve it. I understand I might be in the minority, but I wanted to make my concerns known, because, Fat Face came in, didn't do well, moved on, turnover of this type is destabilizing, and there's nothing to say that the next business couldn't be a Lululemon or a Pottery Barn or, and then we start to lose what draws people to Concord and provides a huge benefit is that we have a unique retail space down in the downtown. I think we should be more protective of that. I think there's, plenty of even other formula businesses that could fit in and provide a benefit to the community. This is not one that I think does.
But do we have enough grounds under 3.3.4A?
I mean, the basics of like, we don't have concerns about, trash, and we don't have concerns about that, but I think the language is broad. I think the intent when passed by town meeting was to provide some safeguarding. And there was a cap on that, but there's a lot of language in here about Concord's historical relevance, unique dining and retail experiences, operated in a manner that preserves community's distinctive small town character. The other locations that I'm aware of Blue Mercury are things that they're at the street, which is a majority formula business development that has a Container Store and a Pottery Barn and a Showcase Cinema. That's not the center of Concord. This isn't a type of business that we've had in the past. The last one I remember that was similar to this was Colonial Stores. If you've been here long enough to remember Colonial Stores, which did have skincare and beauty and things like that, but it's also a place where that lovely old woman would fit you for a bra and you could buy a pair of pantyhose. It was not a chain and something that still added to the community and had a beauty element to it. I don't have any issue with, having some component to that, but this is a wholly owned subsidiary of a very large corporation taking a very prominent location in the center of town.
Well,
So-
you make interesting points.
I've struggled with the same thing, although I did, question whether or not there is a place in town, and there is no more Colonial Stores, there is no place to, you can get some bath salts.
No, it for sure
Yeah,
does not
bringing in
directly
stuff.
compete with another business in
Yeah,
town. That's
yeah,
not my concern.
No, I understand that. The fact that it is, I think of Blue Mercury as something on the street or I don't know if they're in malls anywhere, but in places like the street. And the desire to maintain the character of town. But since I'm new to all this, I did not know how you weigh that against the bylaw.
Mhm.
It seems like according to the bylaw, other than, gee, we wish it were a smaller outfit, and we wish it were more homey. I don't know if it's the way the bylaw is written or the way we've interpreted it in the past or.
And I do think there's an argument to be made for the economic impact of bringing in, as I said before, large national chains, because they do have an impact on retail lease rates. And they certainly it becomes difficult because once again, it's totally understandable. If I'm linear, a large national chain is much more of a sure bet for me in terms of a long-term lease than a small independent retailer. But they can also pay a lot more, and that begins to price out some of the smaller independent businesses that we value. I mean, there's a real value to having locally owned and operated small businesses. They are tremendous ambassadors for the town. They provide a level of service that's difficult to replicate often at chains. I think of the toy store in town that's part of Revolutionary Concord. You call them and you need a birthday present, and your kid is sleeping in the back of the car and they're gonna wrap it and run it up for you. It's that type of service that I don't want to sensationalize it too much, but we start to lose some of that. And I think our identity and also our economics as a town that really relies on tourism, it's important to consider that. And there's a reason this bylaw was passed at town meeting. I mean, this identified an issue and was designed to address it, and we are a part of that.
You have the landlord on screen. I wonder if Mr. Droz would like to make any statement.
I think longevity of business is important. You raise a national chain, and I think what people don't want is constant turnover of space either, right? So if you have a consistency of a store that can be there, like Bluemercury's committed to the town and hiring within the town and providing services that don't exist within the town. Oh, by the way, I live in Concord. I'm just on the other side of town right now. I am a resident. They can provide that within the town. We had many calls. We had calls for food. Can't do food here. Not possible. We had opportunities for different things. Bluemercury is not the first thing that we jumped at. It was carefully thought out as to what the mix in downtown is, so as to not impact other businesses and surrounding, but create a complementary business that's there. But certainly food was a consideration, but given where this parcel is, the fact that there is no availability for grease traps or things of that nature here prevented food and a cafe or things of that nature. So dry goods is the way that we would have to go. And when considering how this fits in with other businesses in the downtown, the cosmetics or beauty products is something, like you mentioned, Colonial Stores went out, is not here, and was complementary to the other clothing boutiques and things that are on Main Street and Walden Street. So it was carefully thought out. It wasn't, let's take the highest rent we can get and put them in. As a resident and somebody who's lived here for a while, it is something that's important to me. I walk downtown every day. So there was careful consideration in that.
And other towns that have adopted formula business bylaws, I can't think of an instance where somebody who qualified and would not cause detriment in the sense of traffic or something like that has been turned down. But this, I've written an article on formula businesses and the Interstate Commerce Clause. It was in the Urban Lawyer maybe 10 or 15 years ago when I was still teaching. And this is towns that do this they're all like Concord for the most part. They don't want to see, what's Concord's pet peeve? Banks and real estate. And that's pretty much the way you can keep banks and real estate out. As far as where the chips fall with other types of stores, we get 1 million tourists a year. This isn't all about whether we need a hardware store. So.
Well, I remember when we adopted the formula business bylaw, when we designed the formula business bylaw, it was not simply about keeping out banks and real estate offices, although that was part of it. Keeping from being flooded by them. And I also know how few formula business bylaws there are, and therefore how hard it is to draw conclusions. So I don't really see that as especially relevant to our decision. More, does the language in the bylaw give us suitable grounds for ruling out a business that falls below the cap and does in fact not have obnoxious signage and such other features.
I will say personally, I saw it as literally flipping between one formula business and another. And when you talk about continuity and all of these things, Fat Face was there for 5 years and then realized they couldn't make any money, so they're flipping out. And chances are good Bluemercury is going to do exactly the same thing. And whether it's a reality of how expensive the real estate is in Concord relative to the physical retail value or not, I don't know. It is interesting that they bemoaned the loss of the toy shop, but at the same time, part of Linear's purchase was buying it without a tenant. That it was more valuable to do that because again, that building is falling down. I mean, there's no like
There's no
question. It
denying
was-
that the rehab has been a huge
Yeah,
benefit to the
and
community.
it
Not
is
denying
one of
that.
those things that it's the reality of the commercial district is valuable as a signpost at times. And it may be, the reality is that I don't see anything in here that justifies saying, hey, this business that offers something different than everyone else is selling isn't good enough. You may agree with that or you may not. I mean, I drive by the West Village Tavern, which is a outpost of the local, which changed their name for Concord and changed their signage and changed their menu and changed because they were admitting that they couldn't do it here. That said, it's just flipping one formula business to another, and it kind of is what it is, unfortunately, that you're presented with the plans that are in front of you versus not the plans you'd love to see. And actually having spoken with the person who wrote the letter at an event last night, unrelated, she mentioned she'd sent it because her feeling was the same. It could be better. It's not that she had any particular objection with what it was or felt like there was any control, but had this moment where, yeah, why would we want that? Well, at the end of the day, you're sort of have what you have. And we've sort of made the rules and this kind of fits it, unfortunately, for better or worse, as somebody who's not gonna buy high-end skincare, regardless of what,
You never know.
the value. I feel like I at least have 2 or 3 years.
Is the bank across from Tricon included in this list? That's being renovated into the real estate office? The former bank, the brick building across from
TD.
Tricon?
Oh, 59.
Yeah,
Yes, but that's not in the Concord Center business.
that was my question, is like, is that the line is drawn on the other side of the
Other
post
side,
office?
yeah.
Okay.
I'm thrilled that it's not a bank or real estate office, and I do think that, at least the trend now is, I think it'll attract a lot of people to Concord who are looking for a Bluemercury, and then they will go and use other things in Concord Center. It could be an asset for as long as the queens are buying $300.
They are.
Oh, yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
No, that's okay. I'm done.
So
Thank
I
you.
I have, so I looked at the other Bluemercuries in Massachusetts at the Seaport and, I guess, Chestnut Hill and they have a very different look exterior than this would. And I'm wondering if the applicant might consider also modifying interior, perhaps to add to their offerings any locally sourced products that they might find that could make it somewhat unique. As opposed to just a cookie cutter, oh, this is what you get at every Bluemercury. Might you consider that as a opportunity?
We're having it on.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're discussing
Yeah.
it.
Probably not
There-
for the
I don't think
city.
that's appropriate.
Yeah,
Like,
to make
I don't think that's the thing you're.
I think
It'd be a suggestion, but we couldn't
Might
require that.
be,
I-
well, we can't require it, but I think
We
it would
can make
make,
best efforts. If
it
you
might,
put that
it might,
in the same way you're gonna make best efforts, to use alternative means of transportation.
Right.
yeah, yeah, I think that it certainly would, perhaps somewhat address both the opportunity that you do present, and also make it feel a little bit more unique to Concord, and might address, a slightly different audience that you would have at the Seaport.
I do have one concern. I know that Bluemercury currently can't do this, but a lot of these companies that are owned by the parent companies or even partner with other ones like Staples with Amazon before. My concern would be if to get more foot traffic in the door at Bluemercury, that they start allowing Macy's returns to happen there and things like that. that's something that I would think would be a big concern because if, a lot of these businesses do that to get the foot traffic in, and that would potentially put a lot of, put more of a crimp on the parking.
Just put a condition in that there will be no store returns at this location. That's fine.
Well, no offsite, because I don't know if you allow customers to return anything that they buy on the premises, but if so, they would have to be allowed to do
He
so.
was referring to
To
like.
make
Macy's.
Macy's,
Yeah.
not being able to
It would
do
have
that
to
in the
be
future.
correctly worded,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm good with returns of Macy store products are prohibited.
Or,
Yeah.
Parent companies.
Yeah.
Products not.
In the future.
products not
On
present on
premises.
premises,
Yeah,
Yeah,
not
okay.
purchased from that.
that store, yeah.
That store, yeah.
I want to be just careful to say, like, Blue Mercury product can be,
Oh, yeah, no,
Yes.
absolutely.
Because their
Yeah,
online
if you
retail
buy it online
presence
and
is
you can-
substantially
yeah.
larger than their.
Yeah.
Right.
So it would be more products not purchased at a Blue Mercury store or on.
Blue Mercury
Directly
website.
from
Mercury.
Directly from Blue Mercury,
Mercury.
whether online or.
Only Mercury products sold on premises can be returned.
Or online.
They want
Or
that
online.
differentiated because what they have online is substantially larger than what they have. They don't want to limit it to
Yeah,
only
That's-
things that are sold in the Concord
So
location.
purchase
still a
directly
Mercury
from
thing.
Yeah.
Blue Mercury, I think would be, yeah.
that's totally. You're just trying to avoid like a Kohl's Amazon thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Chaos.
Good point.
See that Kohl's too.
I'll figure it out in a
Walgreens,
minute.
yeah.
Yeah.
So beyond that, did anyone else have any thoughts, concerns, questions? So what do we need to do? I guess that's the question.
So I have, generally, the. Since this is a special permit, it does require a super majority and not just a regular majority. But the board would need to vote whether to approve the formula business special permit or not. If the board chooses to approve it, then I would take this report and turn it into a decision with amendments to the location, the previous formula business closed at this location. Add additional information that, deliveries are by a UPS or FedEx, not a, large box truck that would be parked on Walden Street. 2 to 4 employees, they arrive between 9:30 and 10 and leave between, 6 and 7. Generally, employees do not stay after closing time. Add information that, there's no exterior or exterior changes to the lighting and interior lighting shall not, yes, the word.
Project.
Still onto the sidewalk.
Spill out.
Yeah.
Spill out onto the sidewalk. The applicant has stated they will direct employees to park in the Walden Street and Kaiser parking lot and not on, take up on-street parking spaces. The applicant agreed to investigate providing locally sourced items, making the store feel more unique to the Concord experience. The condition regarding,
Returns.
items not purchased through Blue Mercury store or online, returns are prohibited. And then, a couple of the comments to the vein that, the business, does not, the retail business products do not compete with other existing businesses and, are complementary to other clothing retail businesses in the area.
That's not a condition, that's like something we have decided that that's true. right?
If that's
Yeah.
something that.
We
we
have
have
noted,
put in there.
Okay.
Before you close the public hearing, Mr. Chairman, I just, I want to make sure everybody understands that this is with one member missing. This is a 5/6 vote to approve the special permit. We've seen That further to warn Bill up before, so.
Appreciate
Yeah,
that.
it's based on 7 members, not just because there's only 6 of you.
The fact we have a quorum doesn't matter. It's still gotta be a super majority of the board. Okay. So I guess with that, we will take a vote on whether to approve what's the actual word we're looking for?
Somebody would have to move it second and then vote.
So I guess it's moving approval of, it's the special permit pursuant to section 3.3 and 11.6 for retail formula business in the Concord Center Business District pursuant to the items that Elizabeth discussed in her summary as discussed in the broader meeting. So do we have a motion for that?
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
I guess all those in favor, since it needs a super majority, we'll, I guess, all vote and then see what that turns out as, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so all those in favor? Aye. And then all those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so that carries 5-1, the super majority.
So I would ask, if one member would like to review the decision before I finalize it, and thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Okay.
Have a nice
I think it passes.
They're new.
From-
Just say I like them.
Can't go very far without this. Thank you.
Or you can go very far. With that. That's a problem. Agenda. And the 705 item, a recommendation to the ZBA, the Middlesex School for special permit and site plan review under zoning bylaws, section 6.2.11, 11.6 and 11.8 for a new athletic practice facility with a height waiver to 72 feet 9 inches at 1400 Lowell Road. Sure, let's continue. I keep going with this. At this time, the applicant has addressed all of the issues. Should I keep going or?
Sure.
They've addressed all the issues and concerns raised by town staff and outside consultant and received approval of the National Resource Commission. The draft planning board recommendation letter for approval with conditions was sent to the board. With the application, I believe we're going to have one distributed right now with a few edits that we noted in the last minute.
So I received comments from Sue and Linda. I don't know who wants to go first with your
I
comments.
defer to my esteemed colleague.
Do you have a copy of that? I have a copy for everyone. Including her. So I don't know, I can bring it up. Andrew, if,
Yeah, that may make sense.
is this one yours?
Saying that it is me, but this is mine.
This is yours.
That one's yours?
Where's?
Yeah, do you want to go with yours? Because.
Okay, go.
Yeah, why don't you go
Sue
first, just to distribute it?
Yeah. why
Oh,
don't you-
okay, sure.
Let me,
well-
let me bring it up.
I'm going to go to page 2 for the first substantive edit.
I gotta bring it up, sorry.
In which I suggest several things which we could trim out or rephrase to make clear what are things that the applicant said, as opposed to it being the planning board that said it, and things that I thought were simply not relevant to our decision and therefore should be removed from our recommendation letter.
I'm also thumb pad challenged. Did I get the right one?
Yes, but we can go to page 2. All right, in the second paragraph, I changed it to say rather the, to make it clear that that was part of what the applicant had stated. I suggest striking the entire next paragraph about the field house design. I personally don't know enough about architecture to say what it responds to or complements, and I don't think it's necessary for the planning board to comment on that. Then, 2 paragraphs down, I made a slight edit to clarify that that entire paragraph is things stated by the applicant. And, again, in the following paragraph, that these are things stated by the applicant, and I thought we could strike half of the final sentence of that second to last paragraph. For simple, yeah,
So, sorry, just for,
Yeah.
can we,
go one by one?
yes.
Okay, sure. All right.
I mean, we can make it quick, but just.
Yeah, okay, so in the second, in the first whole paragraph, the applicant has stated this field house is not being used, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It was 2 separate sentences, and I changed it to say, rather, the field house will serve the existing student body by increasing opportunities for team practice, et cetera, because that is something the applicant has stated. Acceptable?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. And then the next paragraph, the field house design responds to talking about the architectural style and so forth. I suggest we strike this entire paragraph so that the planning board is not making comments about our deep knowledge of architecture of the Georgian era. Okay,
If that's not part of our rationale for making the decision.
The only thing is, I think it's part of it is that it doesn't take away from the neighborhood, but again,
but it
that,
says
I
that
don't
in
think it
other
matters.
places.
Yeah, I don't think
It's
it
not
matters.
away from the
So we do
neighborhood.
kind of, is the
Mhm.
answer, yeah, we
Yeah.
kind of pontificate about that, but not that deeply, yeah.
Okay.
Right, this seemed like a level of detail that was unnecessary and
Which
put
probably
words
came right from the
into our
application, I
mouths.
would
Yeah.
think, yeah.
Okay, skipping over the next paragraph. The following paragraph said the applicant states the field house will accommodate, et cetera, et cetera. But because of the formatting, it wasn't clear that everything in that entire paragraph was things the applicant was saying. So I just slightly modified it, as it was formatted to make it clear that that was all things that the applicant has stated.
Yeah, that's fine.
In the next paragraph, again, I inserted applicant states that to clarify that these are things that are stated by, in fact, the applicant. And in the final sentence, I struck out this building was, no, I struck out in keeping with the school's focus on environmental sustainability as an institutional priority to simply say the building was designed to qualify for silver LEED status, because I didn't think that it was necessary for us to say that first part as part of things we were claiming in our recommendation. Okay, all right, on page 3 at the bottom under A, second paragraph, I struck the word appropriately to simply say the field house has been sited adjacent to the existing or gymnasium, because it's possible, as far as I'm concerned, that there could have been other appropriate sites, and I didn't want to say anything for or against that being the appropriate site.
Where-
She strikes out that thing about the field house
Partial
responded to neo-Georgian architecture. That's because that's what the ZBA asked us.
On page 4.
Here it's top of.
They asked us why we
Oh, the
designed the
page
building.
numbers are
It
different.
was-
If everybody online could make sure they're muted, please.
Sorry, the page numbers.
Oh,
are
I see what you mean, it's
Okay.
you're taking out the word appropriately, because we're not assessing that that was the most appropriate, it's just,
It's just,
that's where it's
okay.
cited.
yeah,
that's
and
fine.
but this is fine, that is where it's cited. Okay, I see the page numbers are different. And so I will cross correlate between the one I brought and the other one. And then there was a redundant word. It said other additional on the next page, and we could either say other or additional, but we don't need them both. That's a simple edit. Next page, nothing. Next page, nothing. Next page, nothing. Under the conditions, condition 8B. The language says water demands can be minimized by demand management tools that may be codified in two listed, documents. I don't understand what we mean by may. Are we giving permission? Are we saying it's possible that that could happen?
That would be a conversation that the applicant would have with the Water and Sewer Division.
So we can't do anything about that here.
I'm reluctant to change a condition that's
That they
given to
wrote
me
up,
by.
okay.
By another,
By another
another
department.
town department, yeah.
I know
Right.
of their process, I don't know the process.
Sure, that's fair.
And that's what they put.
Well,
Yeah,
then,
yeah, that's great.
under condition 9, it's probably the same issue. Shall receive is problematical. It should be either shall obtain or must receive. But if that's the way, one of our town departments wrote it.
That's normal.
Well, that one I'm fine, we can say shall obtain.
Sure.
I don't care.
A small thing, and I think
That one's fine.
that is. What did you say over here? That appears to be it, yes.
Thank you.
I don't know if it makes any difference, but on page 5, D, dark sky complaint. Or is that how?
Yeah, it is complaint, right?
It's compliant, and I
Back
totally
there.
missed that.
I just happened to see it.
Yeah.
Just jumped out at me.
We still trust you as our proofreader.
Yeah.
And well,
Is
you
that an
put,
established dominance thing?
Exactly, you got distracted.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think the general consensus there was Stu's edits were appropriate and no one had any other. I just wanna make it, everyone was nodding and saying, yeah, that makes
Yes.
sense. I just wanna throw it out there that
But Linda has.
those were accepted as reasonable edits and we'll move forward with those and then
Yeah, some,
additionally.
well, some of my edits were like overlapped your
Ah,
edits
okay.
or,
Which is fine. I mean,
Yeah.
grammatical edits.
Just the.
I didn't even bring them up.
I
They were-
mean,
Yeah,
if, for example,
I'm fine with those.
on where you edit, things on on page 2 of the paragraph that starts, the applicant states that. I just said, do we really need this? I thought it was just.
Oh, we
irrelevant.
could strike the entire
I just
paragraph?
wanted to strike the whole paragraph because why?
Okay.
Which one?
Get rid of.
Reflects this
Okay.
core belief that the robust.
Yeah, I struck half of
You
it,
know,
but I would be
most-
fine with
I-
striking the entire.
I
paragraph.
just thought
Sorry.
it really was.
It's your, it's, let me find it.
I pulled it
Yeah.
down and then.
I have it. Okay,
This is
here we go.
why we need to get things into Elizabeth.
No, this is why I need to get things.
Yeah.
To the board earlier.
So I essentially struck those 2 paragraphs, but I put the first up. The second paragraph about the beautification and I didn't say beautifies because I. Whatever, I just thought that was not appropriate. But I thought it was of value to talk about. The enhancement for day students, but I thought it was in the wrong space, so I moved that up.
I mean, my thought is the paragraph that starts, the applicant states that the field house will accommodate blah, 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 blah. Is kind of the justification for why the height. Like, it's describing programmatically what the building is and thus why they have asked for. The height that they've asked for, because. I don't think it's hugely problematic to strike it, but I think that's the reason it's in there is that, you know, this is what's happening programmatically in the building.
Yes.
Hence why we need a waiver on the height.
That the size of the building
The
is.
size of the building, this
why
is what it
it's large,
includes.
Yeah.
It's not a single occupancy gym that could have a height of blah, blah, blah. So that's why I keep that paragraph in.
As long as it's,
Okay.
you know, per my edit, so
Right.
we're clear
Yeah,
about.
As long as
who
we're
is
not,
saying
we're
it.
not saying it, it's
They're
they're
saying
saying
it.
it, and we're
Yeah.
accepting that as
Yeah, we accept the.
justification. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we accept the premise that.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to see what else.
You'll definitely get an opportunity, but right now we're arguing with ourselves about why your application is good, so. It's more grammatical and a discussion of like, you're saying one thing, we're making it clear that our decision is clearly identifying you as the speaker.
Right.
As Middlesex, not the board opining on that this will beautify your campus.
Yeah, we've
Right,
taken into
right.
account the
Yeah.
information you've provided,
Right.
Right,
and therefore we are. yeah.
right.
I think, on page 6, where we talk about the emergency generator. And there I did have some questions about the emergency generator in terms of, is there anything mitigating, this, I presume the sound that would be generated by the, generator, and then how far from dorms and classrooms that would be, and
And
when
faculty
it
housing.
would be, and I guess faculty housing, and when would it be run, in terms of, would it be daytime, just making sure that it would not disturb sleep or classes, and so that's a question.
So I can tell you the generators of that size get exercised once a week. It's for about 20 minutes. And they can schedule it whenever. We have Cat Wednesday. Cat Wednesday at about 8:30 is when the 2 generators get exercised on this campus. So I mean, they can easily condition it that it's,
Yeah.
you know, during daytime hours. You know, Monday through Friday, since it's right next to the faculty housing.
Oh, it's by the faculty housing rather than by the dorms or the,
Any generator has to have exhaust 10 feet above the building. Usually have to have sound attenuation, a lot of, depending on the size. I don't know how big this one is, but look at
It's not that,
big.
it's not that big.
Yeah.
And I can bring up the plan, but if, if the planning board's looking at the Lowell Road is here, Pratt Lane is here, the field house is here, the generator's kind of up over in this corner. So not near the dorms, but it's near the field house and, those faculty homes.
So I just have a question then. Would the planning board weigh in on something that sounds like it would be a decision that the school would make? Because it's not affecting the neighbors or the neighborhood or the surroundings. It's, it's,
The board can go either way.
And since the faculty are therefore residents of Concord, we protect or,
Okay,
serve-
I
Yeah,
would
I
also
don't wanna
imagine
make
you're gonna
this a
do it
long
when you get the
discussion, I
fewest
just-
complaints, right?
Yeah,
10 a.m. on Saturdays.
Yeah,
Kids, we have Saturday classes, students, faculty are up and they're in.
when
class
it's gonna
anyways.
annoy the fewest people and you're gonna get the fewest calls about it.
yeah, absolutely.
10
That
a.m.
would be my guess.
I work in a building that has these things, they run again once a week or whatever, and never
Never, yeah.
noticed. And I'm 2 floors directly above it, and never noticed, so they're not that loud.
I just
I just,
Yeah, no, it's a-
included it
Yeah.
as kind of a piece of information,
Yep.
one. It is an all-electric building.
Yeah.
LEED certified but there is a
Yeah.
gas-powered emergency
generator.
generator. And it is, designed for, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kurt, it's life safety, it's to keep the building from freezing and the lights on. It is not to
That's right.
power the field house as an emergency shelter, so it's,
Correct, we're not a lifeboat facility, it's gonna just be low, what we call powering the low ceiling heights. And keeping one heat pump in circulation.
okay, as long as people, their sleep isn't disturbed or.
but I can,
Yeah.
we can add a statement that. The proposed project does include the installation of an emergency generator. That will be run once a week for a short period of time. Outside of,
outside of ordinary quiet hours, don't we have, doesn't this have quiet hours? or not?
No. Um,
Not between the hours of 10 PM and 7 AM or something, what is the normal, like, isn't that a normal city quiet hour thing? I mean, I don't.
Yeah,
I
but
do-
typically classes will go until, I think, study classes. 9:30 is like study hours are done, 9:30 to 10 beyond is quiet hours. So 7 AM.
okay, um,
Not after 10 PM, not before 7 AM, you know, something just
okay, yeah,
reasonable that doesn't feel like it's gonna punish anybody.
If they're gonna do anyway.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, that's right. So I guess the next question is, should we just go through all these items that you've highlighted? This is the planning board will discuss, should discuss. It begins on page 3.
yeah, I just.
My college dorm they used to have it dumpster at 5 AM, so I appreciate it when someone's looking out for it. They're like, oh, we can't reschedule that. I'm like, okay, well, I'll file a complaint with the city, and then they managed to figure it out.
It's a good point about that.
So
Okay,
I
so we're
went
on page
through-
3?
So well, yeah, page, yeah. So I go through and provide, the information and the items that, the applicant provided, staff comments, during the conversation with the board. And then this is, for each of these required findings, the planning board's making a recommendation to the Board of Appeals. So it's, if there's anything additional that you feel you need to add, or whether it's just a statement that the board believes the applicant is, the height waiver is,
Reasonable according to the zoning bylaw, the
well,
bylaw?
a height waiver is
Yeah.
appropriate, based on the information provided by the application and the plan submitted, or but for each one of these, just that general statement, part of your recommendation.
So I guess we'll start on page 3, which is the 6.2.11, the height waiver, where it's going, I guess the height limit for residents. AA zoning district is 35 feet to the ridge and excludes chimneys, spires, towers, and other projections not used for human occupancy or storage. Here, the requested height waiver is to 72 feet 9 inches. As measured from above the natural grade, the upper 28 feet of the building is the sloped roof with eyebrow dormers. The gable set 15 feet back from the 40-foot tall flat roof, which faces Lowell Road. The main mast of the building is 42 feet tall.
I would add, the lens that the planning board is looking at this and the Board of Appeals. Is that through the Dover Amendment and, an educational use. And, is it, is the waiver they're requesting reasonable for the educational use and the project that they're presented?
So on page 3, under 6.2.11, if I have just been reading the zoning bylaw correctly this entire day in order to produce something we'll be talking about later, I don't think 6.2.11 mentions there being no reasonable alternatives available. So can we change the last paragraph to strike that there are no reasonable alternatives available and simply say the applicant believes that the desired relief to the 35-foot height limit may be granted without substantial detriment to the neighborhood and without derogating from the intent and purpose of this bylaw?
You can, but I
People
think
may not agree with
the
me,
argument that the applicant has presented is for this educational use to this middle for this school to provide this facility, which, and to Abby's point, they've documented this is part of their co-curriculum that there is no reasonable alternative in location due to the, the wetlands, the
Well, it-
Olmsted landscape, taking away existing field.
This is the problem I have with the word reasonable and why I don't like seeing it in our zoning bylaw, because some people would argue that a more reasonable alternative would simply be not to build this facility at all, at which point the school would not be able to provide as good a physical education to its students.
Then
Would
that's
that be
not
reasonable? Would that be unreasonable? But I certainly support the statement that the desired relief to the 35-foot height limit may be granted without substantial detriment to the neighborhood and without derogating from the intent purpose of the bylaw.
I think reasonable is squishy, I agree, but we're saying that based on the project they presented, this is
Also saying the
a,
applicant.
this is
believes.
the project that's in front of us, this is a reasonable.
So
It says the
Can I make-
applicant believes
can I
there are
make
no
a
reasonable
suggestion?
alternatives.
Okay, I'm willing to let
Can
it pass here and I'll take
can I
this
make a
up later.
suggestion?
Yeah,
For these reasons, the applicant believes that it could read, the literal application of the 35-foot height limit would be unreasonable,
well,
and that the desired relief can be granted without substantial detriment to the neighborhood.
well, that doesn't make me think better of it.
I think we
Either
just,
leave it
I
as
think
it
we
is.
leave it as
can
is.
just leave it as it is.
Because it's the belief is the applicant's belief. It's not,
Yeah.
it's not our belief.
Yeah, that's true. Let's just leave it.
So what would the last sentence would the planning board like to state? The planning board believes the requested,
Oh.
the applicant has
That the applicant has supported their whatever,
requested
Yeah.
waiver.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
The planning,
yeah. Has
Yeah.
provided sufficient evidence to support their, whatever a magic word is to. I don't know what it means. I'm convinced, I don't know how to say that in a way that's not like.
provided. Added.
it's the
Added
Can you say that more eloquently?
justification and documentation that
Sure.
the requested waiver
Is appropriate.
Is appropriate.
is appropriate.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's nice, Grace.
The next one comes with regard to 11.8.7.1. The relationship of the bulk and height of the structures and adequacy of the open spaces to the natural landscape, existing buildings and other community assets in the area, in compliance with other requirements of the bylaw, which includes but is not limited to building coverage requirements, yard sizes, lot areas, and setbacks. So, the question is whether the building has been adequately designed in relationship to the bulk and height of structure and the adequacy of open spaces, the natural landscape, et cetera.
the next findings for site plan are a little bit easier. The board just has to make a statement whether they
I would make the same
They
statement
believe-
as in the previous.
Yeah, they provided
section.
appropriate evidence, or whatever language there. If they got-
have the applicant provided adequate justification and documentation that
It's been adequately designed in relationship to the bulk height of
there you
structure.
go.
Whatever this language is, but we find that it's adequate. At least that's my take on it. If anyone objects, let me know.
Okay,
Next has to do with the convenience and safety of vehicular and pedestrian movement within the site. So the community safety officer did not find significant issues or concerns with the location of the proposed field house or vehicular movement or pedestrian movement around, as long as its condition regarding fencing and other safety precautions would be in place during construction. I didn't find any concerns either related to that.
so I can craft a similar statement, but as now I think back, adding in that similar statement with the recommend, conditions recommended.
Right,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, so,
Good point.
so what happens with the safety study? I mean, would that come back to us in any way?
No,
It's in the
no, it goes,
conditions.
it goes back, it will go to Public Works Engineering.
Mhm.
And then, the applicant would have to file a right-of-way permit to do any, recommended changes or upgrades identified in the.
So if
in
the
the
study
city.
comes back and says something's necessary, then the applicant would go
Yes,
back and.
That's one of the conditions, which I did receive some minor edit feedbacks from town staff, including the fact that condition 17 and 16 and 17 were duplicates, so I will be deleting one of them. But yes, the crosswalk is
So they just implement those changes. prior
Yes.
To
it's
getting a certificate. of
condition.
occupancy. Okay,
Condition 19 and
20.
condition 19, oh, and 20.
Right, they won't get a certificate of occupancy unless and until it's taken care of as
Right.
needed.
So the next item is the adequacy of the arrangement of parking and loading spaces in the proposed use. That I guess the campus parking is being reduced from 387 to 355, and the building commissioner has determined that the school requires a total of 241. So the excess is adequate, I guess we could say.
The, Linda had one comment,
Yeah.
That the temporary parking lot that's off the main driveway, that's not gonna be for, that could be for some construction employees, but it'll be open to staff as well.
Okay. That I got, yes.
Yeah, part of it was
Okay.
the operation of their,
So,
That's
I
normal.
think they had mentioned part of it was the operation of all of their vans and stuff for the teams as well. It's gonna go
That's
through
right,
that.
that's right.
So I guess we have another finding of adequacy there.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm.
Physical lighting of the site, especially adequacy, of the exterior lighting for convenience, safety and security, and the protection of neighborhood roadways and night sky.
Again,
So I did
dark
raise,
sky
Yeah.
complaint.
Yeah.
Did you? Yeah, timers and motion sensors.
so, so I raised that. And it's primarily that south side that faces the field, which has a lot of glass. So I know Kurt is here as well as the architect, but if Kurt's.
Yeah, Lonnie's on our architect, but as I understand it, and Lonnie jump in, but we're gonna have motion sensors and timers on that, so after 20 minutes of no motion detected, those lights would shut down, dim down, or shut off completely, so.
Yep, that's right. So all those enclosed rooms and the corridors are on that 20-minute timer. And then the lobby spaces can be programmed with a time clock.
And so. When would that clock run?
As soon as, so, Lonnie, I'm not quite certain of the logic control, but I assume it's when, as soon as there's like a countdown from when it actually detects no motion, once that's triggered, then it goes in that 20 minute.
No, you mean between
For the
like 10
lobby.
and 7?
Oh, for the lobby.
Oh,
For the lobby, yeah, the corridors are on motion sensors, so no matter what, if someone enters that space, the egress lighting and the lighting comes on, but the lobbies, since they're kind of in their own world, those will be programmed with a time clock. So Kurt, that'll be up for you and the operations team to decide when those lights need to be dimmed or turned off, kind of those lobby areas.
I would probably go with that 20-minute interval.
Well, so in the evening, I mean, those lobbies. you
Yeah.
know, The field house is not gonna be used
It'll be
after.
down.
Right, so you could turn those off at
Turn
sunset
those
or
off.
at 9 o'clock or whenever no one's
Yeah.
using the building anymore.
Yep.
So,
It's the conclusion of use or something.
Yeah.
Because it's, I mean, I don't know, it's not an urban setting, so I don't know if there's a
No, right,
safety,
yeah.
I don't know if there's a safety, like, whatever lighting
That we're,
thing.
trust me, internally, we're going back and forth about, you know, that timing, but I've recommended that once final rounds or final checks are done, it's shut down, actually between 9:30, no later, so.
Okay. So it'd be to time clock set to go off at 9:30.
9:30,
Yeah.
9:30.
You don't anticipate having
I mean, would it be the conclusion of the final security sweep
late
or
games
whatever?
or?
No.
No, no.
No, okay, there could be.
Yeah.
Would it be the
Let's
conclusion?
hold on, we all.
We go into triple overtime.
Yeah,
I just hate
We
times.
are, I know you're a hockey fan, so you, right, so there's those tournament times or those things that they, maybe the ISL would host the big basketball tournament there. There may be a couple of those one-off type evenings, but I wouldn't expect it to be in one.
Yeah.
couple a year.
So at the conclusion of the security sweep or whatever, some language that when you're shutting the place down.
Basically, when the last person, when you say it's empty, that's when the light should be off.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes,
And it's still gonna be tied to your lead requirements anyways, so.
yes,
With all the logic anyways.
absolutely.
I don't know how to make that a condition, but.
so, Lonnie, can I ask, so, hallways and,
So the corridors and all of the enclosed rooms will have motion sensors.
enclosed room?
The lights in those spaces will turn off after 20 minutes. The lobbies will be on a time clock that will be programmed for preset times for the light to remain on.
But to not, to
To
not,
correspond with building use.
yeah, to correspond. with-
correspond
The
with
last-
building use,
Last,
yeah.
last use of the day, but.
So
Final
Okay.
suite,
Yeah.
security
I
suite.
hate giving it time. You're like, yeah,
Yeah.
you get lights out. Well,
And end of use of the building.
End of the use of the day, end of use of building.
Okay.
Section E is detrimental use of surface water drainage, site buffer, preservation of light and sound, and this included the generator discussion, which we had.
Which I added the 10 to 7 AM.
So surface water drainage is something that's discussed by CPW, so that's just their conditions related to surface water runoff. Sound and site buffers, I guess is a question. We've already acknowledged that there's buffers between that and Mole Road, and I don't know what else would make sense, but other than saying it's adequate. For Cedar. Okay. If anyone else has any thoughts on.
The only thing, as I'm thinking about it, that I will probably, add is that, the applicant did the shadow study, but then they also provided those, and Lonnie, correct me if the term's right, it's the, photo simulation.
Oh, right, it was the photometrics. Of
No,
the,
the photo, simulation of the.
Building and
The street shots from
the
the street
street
shots
shots.
from the
Oh,
abutter.
oh, right,
Simulated
Yeah.
street
Yep.
shots.
Say that 3 times.
Did. Thank you, Steve.
Sure.
Street shots of the proposed building. Okay,
Okay, the next item is the adequacy of disposal of refuse and other wastes for uses permitted on the site. This is a public health issue, so it just depends on whatever their findings were related to that item, right? With nothing.
for the on-site sewage disposal system, the trash from the facility becomes just part of the school's.
Right.
Trash management, and there's been no history of issues, which I can add that, but.
And there's no significant change in what they're doing,
Yeah.
it's just. Yeah, it's not like a food service thing or something. The next is the adequacy of fire protection. That again is the assistant fire chief. Had recommended conditions, so we would just. accept those, require those conditions, so nothing more to do there unless anyone has any comments. Sustainability, resiliency to the design, the site design, responsive to the environment, actively contributes to the development of a more sustainable community. They did note that there were 9 chargers, 18 charging spaces, and that it's all electric. I don't know if there's anything more that people.
I did get a question from the sustainability director, and either Kurt or Steve can answer this, and I couldn't remember if, currently there's proposing 9 dual level 2 chargers, so a total of 18 charging stations. Whether the school during this project will include at least the conduit in the area, should they want to expand
Yes,
the number of stations, and whether that conduit would incorporate the ability in the future if you went to level 3 charging stations.
don't know how to answer that one.
And he was specifically also level 3, which is, the faster ones, but also light truck and buses.
Mhm.
But I'm not sure we're at level 3 charging.
There's
but-
Yeah.
difference in the conduit that you have to run for those two?
Yeah. you
Oh,
can
bigger.
go bigger.
Bigger?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
substantially?
and it's more
Yeah.
power. With the 18 that we have, we've already maxed out the power that we're drawing into our electrical room with the standard level 2 chargers, so the level
So no-
3
so no-
chargers is like a whole nother level.
I mean,
It's been listening to how questionable the necessity for level 3 is in most locations. And how level 2 will really get us most of where we want to go. The point
Mhm.
about trucks and buses is not something I know about, and it's interesting. I don't know if there's a difference between a level 2 truck charge versus a level 3 car charge, or I have no idea.
Or an 18
So-
passenger van for.
But
sports.
Steve, or Kurt, the plans do incorporate conduit to allow for the expansion of charging stations
Correct.
in the
To at
future.
least level 2 charging, yeah.
Level 2.
Yeah, the only thing they could do is go with whatever larger runs, and more parallel runs, empty. And then,
Right.
because you're probably running at a 2-inch. Taking a stab at it, go to 4-inch, and then you can pull the wire up, pull it in, and you're ready for future expansion, the bigger wire.
Just increase the conduit now.
You already have the trench open,
Yeah.
that's your cost of really opening the trench. And sticking that PVC in is not gonna be a lot more to do.
We'll make sure the electrical engineer we'll send them an RFI.
Maybe we just outfit it with the bigger conduit now, run the level 2, and then we
Right.
have to
Then you pull the wire
tie and
out
snake,
after.
right,
Yeah.
tie and snake it out.
That's easy to do.
Yep, that's a good recommendation.
bigger gauge conduit isn't the left, it's the other side.
So I'm not planning on putting that part in yet.
No, I wouldn't consider that a condition, it's just something to think about, there's no,
I love that sidebar.
no, that's interesting.
Brian, you can offer that to the electrical engineers, a change order at no cost.
It's not the engineer that's gonna get paid, it's the guys putting it in the ground.
Exactly.
No, but that's, we already
That's a
own
good
2-inch conduit, we can put it in bigger conduit.
No, that's a good
I
idea.
don't know what size, but I'm just taking a stab at what we've put in typically is 2.
Yeah,
Inch and a
whatever,
quarter,
whatever the
two.
conductor size is,
Yeah.
for the level 3, yeah.
Sorry.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, so that was,
Somebody has to make a motion to adopt the recommendation letter to the Board of Appeals for Middlesex School Field House. Based on the discussion and edits this evening.
So
I will
moved.
second.
Sorry.
And then all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
No, that is unanimous.
It's a busy day tomorrow.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, very much appreciate it.
Thank
Best
you.
of luck. It'll be an exciting.
Have a good evening.
day.
Safe, everyone.
We'll see you Thursday.
Absolutely, see you.
See you Thursday.
Steve.
Oh, that's the internet.
Do we have any members of the public in the waiting room
In the waiting room?
or in the
Yes.
meeting?
Oh, yes.
Do we need to take public comment? We missed public
Not
comment.
anymore.
Not anymore. Okay.
But since this is just a recommendation.
Oh,
we're
okay,
not
just a
required-
recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay. Were we required to take public comment in the first?
Probably.
Sorry.
But nobody raised their hand.
Okay, as long as, yeah.
So, moving on, the next agenda is administrative business, which is public comment. General public comment is limited to up to 15 minutes, with no more than 3 minutes allocated to any one speaker. General public comment is limited to those items which are not on the agenda. Since we have no one in the room, I will open it up to the internet and see if anyone is interested in making a public comment right now. And no one has raised their hands, so we will move on to the next administrative item, which is the MBTA community zoning update process discussion.
Real quick, this is not gonna be a heavy lift, it's more of a getting guidance from the board. I did present to the select board, quite a few weeks ago. Just went over what I went over with the planning board regarding the 8 comments that we received from the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, which for Pat will now call HLC. As the board discussed last time, I'm working with the GIS team. I am waiting to get a meeting with HLC staff to go over all of the 8 comments and how our GIS team is addressing some of the, the GIS items. Then there's just comment items. Yes, we'll give you the map. It was already adopted, but we'll give you the map when it's adopted. Yes, we know, it's a site plan. It's not a special permit. It's not a jurisdictional, subjective. And then the main comment being the single contiguous district comment. And procedurally what, talking with town council and then also the Chris Clutchman, the director at HLC, outlining moving forward. It's my recommendation and what I'm looking for guidance from the board is working with our GIS team to come up with 2 or 3, I'm gonna say call them scenarios, how to address the single contiguous district comment from the map perspective and the GIS compliance model perspective, making sure we have the right amount of area, number of units, capacity, and all of that. Come up with, maybe 2 or 3 different options. And then have the board hold have a dedicated session in January to hold, a public workshop as part of your meeting, get feedback on the 2 or 3 options, and then the board would move forward and present that as a warrant article. The warrant doesn't close till February 19th. Town meeting's not till June again. I'm trying to get past, we're all trying to get past April 19th right now. So that's, that's my recommendation on how to move forward. So I would imagine in, November and your November, December meetings, having those 3 options for the board to discuss. And, I can ask our GS team to come up with 5, and then you guys, can pick 3, or, just so we're not starting from scratch or just having one option and then getting community input in January for that. I also, just as a side note, sorry, Sue, met with the consultant. We've been cranking out the draft site plan, rules and regs for MBTA in October, and we're going to be having a meeting with a full staff meeting to go over all of them so we can get all staff input, and then have the board basically review that draft again November, December time. And then, what you could do is that same dedicated meeting to get input on those scenarios. That could also be your scheduled public hearing to adopt the site plan rules and regs. Sometime in January.
When you meet with HLC, will you be raising the question of whether there's any tiny hope that we could get some kind of dispensation?
Oh, I'm
First-
definitely raising the
Okay,
question.
yes,
Um,
I realize we have to
yeah.
proceed,
The-
however,
yeah.
with, under the assumption.
The question, Sue raised, and, what we're definitely gonna talk about is, their comment was this single contiguous district of, 42 acres. Well, we have two train stations, if the district is more than 25 acres, and we have 25, if, I'm definitely gonna raise that question, because, I can't recall off the top of my head, I don't remember what, what number one, or number two district is, which is, I don't know if we're close to being that, but yes, no, I will, I'll definitely ask that
Great.
question.
And because we're not the only town that interpreted it the way we did.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. And are you aware, have any of the other towns met with HLC yet and said, hey, this doesn't make any sense to us?
On that.
On that
specific-
specific,
I don't
you
I don't have
yeah,
a specific town.
Yeah,
I haven't looked at the list recently,
yeah,
but as of a month ago, there were still only three
Yeah.
communities. And they had 50 communities
mhm,
that they still haven't, finished reviewing,
Yeah.
so.
yeah, okay.
And I don't remember if there's any others with two commuter rail stations that are in this same boat.
Yeah, but I remember we had this conversation of
Yeah.
like this.
We did, yeah.
This wasn't a novel interpretation
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
part of the town of Concord,
Yeah.
and we kind of took a swing at it and said, let's see if they'll approve this. This seemed to be kind of the standard interpretation.
Yeah.
And I was, so, we will be, submitting our district compliance application by the end of the year.
Hmm.
And, that was the conversation I had with HLC. We will submit, and all these other things, we'll have, addressed before then, the GIS modeling side of things. All of that will be, addressed, and, with that district compliance application, say, the town is, actively moving forward in, addressing this comment and, expect to, put together a warrant article for our annual town meeting. The response, the comment I got back is, that's great. You submit by the end of the year, the town will be put in review status. Like the 50 some communities that are still in review status from last December. So now, 9 months, 10 months later, they're still in review status. She said, we probably, our application probably won't even be looked at till after June.
Mhm.
So. Yeah.
So in terms of the scenarios, what are the variables that you'll be looking at within different scenarios? Just different parcels? Or
And
here,
it,
here I'm just like, for example, given what's going on with the accessory dwelling units and the potential that they only require one parking space, could a scenario be within the station areas to change to one parking space and just ask the question, does that get us
So,
anything? I'm
I-
just wondering.
I don't know. I mean, I can ask the GIS team to run anything you want.
I know, and that's what I'm
My,
saying, what are
my
the anything?
my
I mean-
concern is, you know, changing the boundaries, changing the map is a very narrow focused set thing. And from a community standpoint, it's something that people can understand in, it's fairly, simple, and, this is why. When you start changing the actual language, then as with any zoning, I start to become more apprehensive about unintended consequences that at this moment in time, it being September, the warrant doesn't close till February, that's still a short short amount of time to try and make sure that unintended consequences haven't been done. But I mean, I can ask it. Changing just the parking doesn't answer that, doesn't fix the, or address the single contiguous district comment, but
Right.
but if there was a way where just adding just to get to 42 acres, but one scenario is adding these couple of parcels instead of these couple of parcels, and because somebody preferred these to be added and not those, but it didn't meet the unit capacity or the or the modeled capacity. But if you change the parking, then it kind of, that's an option. So I would, that's something I can ask them to do. But I'm hesitant to change the language. For those reasons.
So for the alternative scenarios they're coming up with, it seems like there's a couple. It's the parcel add. You basically add in a couple of parcels and see what happens. There's a parcel swap where you say, okay, not this parcel, this parcel.
Yes.
And then one I'd like to see, just so we have that discussion, is a parcel reduction, basically shrink it. Because isn't part of the issue that you have 42 acres that have to be contiguous, and if you shrink the overall area you've set up, you can kind of shrink your way to compliance.
If you had if
We
you
may not
had
have
enough
units.
cushion on the unit capacity or the compliance area.
And if we reduce the
Which I
parking
don't.
requirement, then we could have more unit capacity, but
Well,
that's the can of
but-
worms problem that Elizabeth is talking about.
But it also could be that you're, by reducing the parcel, it's almost like a reduction and swap. Like if you reduce a bunch of wet parcels and put in one really good dry one, that could increase your capacity, but it looks like you've now shrunk it.
Mhm.
And that could be, and there's just something to think about, like, Concord Oil is not really that buildable because the back lot is basically underwater, but if you swapped out some other thing, it just kind of,
Mhm.
then it's probably gonna need to be part of the discussion, I would think,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Even though it looks worse.
So, so I'll have, we'll run, different things. The only other item, is, that beyond, my reluctance to start changing the words because of unintended consequences. Some members and people have said, well, why don't you just add all of 2229 Main Street? And I'm even more reluctant to try and incorporate a whole brand new area that was not part of the 1.5 year conversation.
Well, plus it's too far away. and too large, it would overwhelm our 50% requirement.
But
But
it doesn't,
yes, I see your
right,
point.
but it doesn't help that issue of a single contiguous district within the transit area. And that's where it's that balance that's gonna be, it's gonna be complicated. But it's really gonna just be, a GIS modeling, mathematical. What do you add, what do you take away? And it's, so we'll find something. I'm not worried that we'll find something. It's gonna be, a conversation. It's gonna be a compromise. But if the board is, agreeable with that approach, then what I'd probably like to do is, I don't think we have your. I'm gonna have Heather map out the meeting schedule for, January to June. I'll send it around to the board and then we'll pick, that meeting in January and dedicate that. Okay, great.
The next item on the agenda is the 2025 zoning bylaw amendment related to additional dwelling units.
So I did get comments from Sue.
I have a copy of my comments.
Oh, no, I.
Oh, you-
made
okay.
copies.
All right.
As long as it doesn't impact quorum, I have a asthmatic at home that needs a breathing treatment. May I excuse myself from?
Yeah.
It's peak week and it is
Yeah.
not ideal. So thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Don't forget your coffee.
Don't you want me to?
Thank you.
So just give me 2 seconds so I can bring this up online. I know, I had to rescue my mother yesterday.
From something.
In her condo complex, they have, one of the septic fields and they have it naturalized, so there's grasses and flowers and then weeds and a lot of ragweed. And, yesterday was the day the landscape company came with walk behind brush hog. Before I turned even into her complex, my eyes started watering and itching and swelling, and my mom, oh, I felt so bad for her. She was not doing well. Okay. So Sue, I don't know if you wanna go
Sure.
through your comments and then I can give a little update with my conversation with the building commissioner.
Great. My suggestion was to future-proof the language a little bit and modify item former H, new G, rather than stating the names of our 2 commuter rail stations to cross-reference Massachusetts general law related to this. That way, if we change what kind of transit we offer in Concord, if we get a state bus or a regional bus or even a local bus or anything, we don't have to come back to town meeting and pass a zoning bylaw amendment to fix this. And also in case the state legislature manages to clarify the language, currently the language says located not more than 0.5 miles from a commuter rail station, subway station, ferry terminal, or bus station. They neglect to clarify whether private buses, for example, count. And hopefully not, but I don't want to get into that. And if we just cross-reference MGL, then we don't have to worry about it at all. And then in the explanation at the end, I had some tweaks about that to explain, because we're now cross-referencing MGL chapter 48, section 1A, and nobody knows what that is, to say that it says this bit about 0.5 miles of a commuter rail station, subway station, ferry terminal, or bus station. And to say that in Concord, the only public transit stations are Concord Center and West Concord, oh, that should be and West Concord. Commuter rail station, and we could either include or not include a statement, the law is unclear as to whether the pickup point of the Yankee commuter bus would qualify as a bus stop. I'd kind of be inclined to leave that out and let it be part of the presentation if anybody asked us about it.
So I would not include that in the explanation for the warrant.
Yeah.
Because it's not an explanation for the amendment. But I will,
Yeah, we could
all
also
of
leave
these
out more,
draft-
but you're right.
all of these draft warrant articles will go to town council as soon as they're like final draft. But I will raise that question with town council, about, having it be stated to reference mass general law and, the question about private and whether stating it this way raises a red flag, because, I'm reluctant to include anything in our bylaw if town council were to come back and say, well, by including that mass general law reference, it could open, somebody says, well, this is a stop for Uber, and now, and even though that's private,
But it goes
It's-
both ways, because the Attorney General could invalidate our zoning bylaw amendment on grounds that we wrote specifically these two stations into it. And according to them, we have more stops, and then we would be out of compliance. So it could go either way. Town council will.
Yes, I'll
Right.
leave that one for town council. Then my conversations with the, building commissioner, dealt with the square footage. Why 900 and why not just 1,000? The bylaw currently allows by special permit up to 1,000. I think, at least the planning board was in agreement with town council to delete the, special permit up to 1,000. You can't make a reasonable argument over 100 square feet, but, the building commissioner just asked that I raise the question, why not 1,000? And I don't know, the law says 900, and that's what the board went with, so I'm raising that as a talking point.
Well, 10 by 10 is a reasonable small bedroom or office. It really is a significant amount of space. I laid it down on my floor this morning. And I could see the value of including that. I would have argued in favor of keeping the 1,000 by special permit, except special permits are just such a pain for everybody. It's not worth leaving that process in place, but I would kind of support saying 1,000 by right.
I don't think anyone's contemplating a special permit. I think it's whether the 1,000 is.
No, whether it's
Yeah.
900 by
900
right or
Versus
1,000.
1,000
Right.
by right.
So of the ADUs that have been built, do we have a sense of how many have been
750 or
750 or 1,000, or, are they all going up to?
Yeah, I mean,
1,000?
we've been keeping track. I can get that number.
I think.
If you wanna
that
wait.
Might be informative if they're,
Okay,
If we can, so we don't have to just use what the law says,
Nope, it's a minimum.
yeah,
You
900
always go
square
above.
feet is a
a
minimum.
minimum.
Yeah, you could go up to whatever you wanted.
Says the additional dwelling unit, am I in the wrong place? The additional dwelling unit shall occupy no more than 900 square feet.
Mhm.
of
You
gross.
could make that 1,000.
You just can't be
That's a
less
max
than 900.
question. We can't make it.
It can't be less than 900. So you're just
Our
saying,
size limit can't be less.
it
than
it could be
900.
built less than, but you can't say it, you can't force them to be less than 900 because that's the new minimum.
Oh, okay,
We're saying, okay, 900 is what you're legally entitled to, fine, and just moving on. But the question is
okay, so
whether,
we could change it to 1,000,
Yeah.
and why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we just say, do it? If the building commissioner is looking for that, for simplicity's sake, for
Well, I think it's a-
consistency? For,
Also, what should qualify, I mean, there must be some size beyond which it's not an additional dwelling unit. And we would have to call it a whole new
No,
primary
No.
unit that should be a duplex. Well, no, I mean, we could do anything we like, but.
you
we
could
could make that
3,000
square,
square
yeah.
feet if you
Mhm.
wanted to,
It's
but
just you start to conflate it, you're right. It
But-
starts,
but-
it starts to
but I just
feel.
mean from
not
a
accessory.
standpoint of zoning bylaw, why would we want to call that an additional dwelling unit
second,
rather than
yeah.
say, let's allow duplexes everywhere or whatever?
And I'll say in my mind, there's a certain amount of cost associated with a house or a dwelling unit, regardless of what you do. And the more square footage you can put into it will reduce the overall cost per square footage, so it'll make it more likely someone will do it. Like, if it can be 2 bedrooms, you're more likely to do it than if it's gotta be a studio. You know what I mean? So where you're getting to 1,000 square feet, does that? It's creating more of an incentive to build an ADU, so maybe that's a good thing. That's the only thing I think of.
But
then I think
But
of
what
the flip
ADU
side.
Flip side
the
is,
ADU is supposed to provide
accessory.
diversity of housing
yeah,
options. And then,
A smaller ADU is going to garner a smaller rent.
Right.
Than a larger ADU.
Right,
correct, yeah.
right, yeah.
But is,
But is it gonna get built? I
is
don't know.
that? Well, I mean, so,
Well,
let
and
me,
we
you know
will
what,
also-
I'll come back
Yeah.
with the
If
numbers.
you say, hey, we built
And-
however many of these and they're
and
all
if only,
700 square feet.
You know, 3 were only 750 and, 11 were 1,000,
Yeah.
so I'll come back with the numbers, so we'll skip, we'll skip, I did add
Like it.
excluding,
Does
excluding.
anybody get a special permit, for example, to build one that's 920?
Presumably, yeah, because 1,000 is the absolute limit, so you're
Yeah,
counting.
no,
But-
there's some that are 860.
So people are going for special permits without maxing out at 1,000?
Yeah.
Yeah.
and remind me, basements don't count or do count?
We're clarifying,
So we're clarifying that.
for the garage.
Well, that was a
Where is-
conversation that the
where
board
is it?
had, not to include. It's as defined under section in NB 1.3.12. So that's gross, the definition of gross floor area is outside wall to outside wall for any space with a ceiling height greater than 6'8". So if you have a basement that has a ceiling height of 7 feet, that counts into the square footage. If you have a basement where the ceiling height is only 6'7", that would not count into the square footage. Because that cannot be conditioned habitable space.
So basements don't count.
Well,
If it's-
mm,
it depends on the height.
Well, there's
Because some basements.
there's a
You-
lot of.
I know.
basements.
I'm not a tall man, but I know. I've been in those basements.
So you could have a 900 square feet and a 6'7" basement.
Yep.
That's also 900 square feet that wouldn't count, so
Correct.
you could have, for shorties like me,
But you wouldn't be able to turn that basement into habitable space. You could use it as storage. But you couldn't put a bedroom down there or bathroom or.
Legally.
it would be against code
Legally,
legally, yeah.
legally.
the building for
record.
habitable, conditioned habitable space has to have a ceiling height of 6'8" or greater. So somebody would not be able to get a building permit to turn that into a bedroom or
Okay, but I could use it as,
storage. You could use it for whatever you wanted.
make it into a yoga studio, or gym, or.
Cause that's
Playroom
not a
for the
bedroom and
kids.
it's not a
Not
bathroom.
No, you wouldn't be able to turn it in,
I would just have space and
you
I
would
could
just have space.
put in my, bike and my, whatever.
You could use it as storage,
Or-
but you could not get a building permit to, put up, drywall and, a bathroom and you.
Oh, I couldn't,
No,
no.
you cannot
Okay.
use that as conditioned habitable space.
Guess you couldn't even select, that's interesting.
So it's a wine.
So wine cellar.
Wine cellar.
Slash
Okay.
gym.
And junk storage.
Lots of storage.
Lots of storage, yeah,
Um,
I like that.
Now that I think about it, I think we should tweak the wording in B. Because it's a little bit confusing as to whether and excluding a garage means and excluding it from what counts as gross floor area, which is what it means.
yes.
Versus and excluding a garage, meaning the ADU can't have a garage. If, I'll think about it, I'm sure there's some way to tweak it so that people wouldn't
Well, yeah, you
misread
could
it.
say no more than 900 square feet of gross floor area, excluding garages.
Garage is so excluded.
Well,
from
can I
setback or
finish
something.
my garage and
Well, that's why we're gonna exclude it. The garages are, that was the conversation last time.
But exclude it from the counted area, not exclude
Exclude
having
it from
it.
the 900 square
Right.
feet.
Yeah,
So I could have a separate garage.
That's a garage.
With a house above it, with a
Mhm.
unit
With a
above,
loft.
and you
Or
wouldn't
next to it,
count the
or
garage
someplace
towards the
else.
square footage of that other thing.
yeah. You could also have an ADU and then have a yet another outbuilding that would be the garage for the ADU, if you could somehow find space for that. Doesn't seem like a very practical alternative.
Some people have a lot of land.
Yeah,
Right.
people want land,
Okay.
certainly.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So I'll work on B, or Sue can work on B.
And I'll,
Yeah,
I'll
get
send
back
you
to
some
me.
slightly
Okay.
tweaked wording, just so it will be harder to misunderstand.
And
And
then,
oh,
go ahead.
I was gonna say and I don't have wording for this, but in that explanation, can we put somewhere that a tourist home is a short-term rental? Is the same as a short-term rental, because I'm not sure that people.
You-
I
That's a-
I just,
that's
In
a
Concord, we have a
5.3.15.
townhouse, not a town hall. And in Concord, we don't have Airbnb or short-term rental, we have tourist home.
Well, we do have in one of the zoning bylaw appendices some definitions, and it would
Yeah.
be nice if somewhere in the definitions, we pointed out that a tourist home is a short-term rental,
well, that's, I think, further down.
We're not.
but it's not part of.
5.3.
Well, no,
Isn't that-
because it's
isn't
an
that in this?
appendix and
No,
therefore it's not
that's-
formally part of the zoning bylaw, and it does not need to go through that meeting. We could just do it.
Okay.
In Elizabeth's copious free time.
So the last thing I did want to
thank
discuss with the board is new item F. And this is where I will have a discussion with
Mhm.
town council. I gotta go down to item F. And this is a discussion I will have with town council. Section 6.2.4 is the frontage exception. Bylaw. And the frontage exception bylaw is, it's a dimensional, bylaw for the creation of new lots. That allows a lot to have 80% less than the required frontage. So long as where the dwelling is placed is where the lot widens out to meet the required frontage. It was adopted in 1975. And the town planner at that time was Kevin Hurley. So I emailed Kevin Hurley because I found the planning board's report, and did I send it to the board?
Yes, you said-
Yeah.
I did, okay. And as you read in the report, it really did not include any statement for the justification for that dimensional requirement for this placement of the dwelling. And Kevin's comment, which I haven't called him to have him clarify the comment, was the reason behind that. If you imagine yourself going down a street where each lot had to have 125 feet of frontage, and the house was placed back, 40 feet. And then you got to a reduced frontage lot where it's lot, house, edge of the lot, house, edge of the lot. they wanted the dwelling set back to retain the continuity of the streetscape. So it wasn't lot, house, lot area, house, lot area. Lot area, house, lot area. So it dealt with the spacing of the homes. And
This
the
is very
streets.
mid-20th century.
So. But, you know, at this time in the conversation I will have with, you know, town council is, inserting that. And, you know, clarifying, you know, 624 is a dimensional requirement for the creation of a lot. And it's not a setback for a structure. It's a requirement for the placement of a dwelling. If you want to reduce frontage lot. And that's what we're trying to clarify. Because the ADU, current bylaw allows for somebody to get a special permit to allow reduction in the required setbacks. And so it's just, it is a zoning wordsmith interpretation kind of, and unfortunately, there's a little bit of the courts interpretation being added to it as well, you know, what is a difference between a dimensional requirement and the placement of the dwelling for a lot, and how is that different than a setback under the table, the dimensional table for a structure? Is there one, so it's still to be determined, you know, how that happens, but, you know, again, the building commissioner's comment, was if you can currently apply for a special permit to get a waiver from a setback, you know, why wouldn't somebody be allowed to get a waiver from this setback? And that's where he and I are having the conversation with town council is, I don't consider it a structural setback. I consider it a requirement for a reduced frontage lot. So that's where that conversation is still happening, if that makes sense. If it makes sense to Pat, then I know.
Pat's still hung up on the wording of the 900 square feet. I think I get what you're saying, but, I think maybe in a year I'll really get it.
Yeah, I mean, the dimensional table sets out what minimum standards are for lot size, frontage, for setbacks for structures. And 624 outlines what you can do to change one of those dimensional requirements, and that's the frontage. And to do that, you know, there is a provision that says if you want to change this dimensional requirement for your frontage, your dwelling has to be placed, you know, in this location. So that's where, you know, I see that's a dimensional requirement for the creation of a lot, and it's not just like your 40-foot front, 15 side, 30-foot rear
Okay.
structural setback. So that's where we're having an interpretation conversation with town council. But everything else I think is fairly, you know, straightforward. From a community standpoint, Concord is in a much better place than a lot of communities.
You mean the acceptance of the community, because we already are practically there with our local bylaw?
Yep. Yeah. And I think, you know, Concord's had an ADU bylaw for a very long time, you know, since the mid-70s. You know, the bylaw was amended to have by right since 2020. And, you know, there's been, you know, a slow stream. I think part of that is, you know, the cost of construction. Whether you build a single family dwelling or an ADU. Yes, an ADU is cheaper, but but you would think, oh, a dwelling is 100, an ADU must be half that, and,
Somebody
it's
was
not.
just advertising $300,000 and up ADUs in the Concord Bridge.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's not cheap. Well, I mean, that's just one advertisement.
So, maybe, if, things change, supply, demand, and, all of that, they might be more, happening more often, but it wasn't the, thousands, that people had, fear of. Okay.
The next item is the 2025 zoning bylaw amendment housekeeping. Board
Okay.
member Sue Gulshan.
I brought a few copies. I actually am proposing,
Which one's first?
regularize.
Is that right?
So we have 22 different places in the zoning bylaw where we have some version of if the board finds that the desired relief may be granted without substantial detriment to the neighborhood and without derogating from the intent and purpose of this bylaw, something we just saw tonight earlier. And many of them are different from each other in many different ways. First of all, it's confusing. It opens both the planning board, the zoning board of appeals, and applicants and the public to wondering, is it significant that it's phrased differently here from the way it's phrased over there? Does it mean the grounds for decision are different? Does it mean the standards for what qualifies and does not qualify are different? And I am proposing to regularize them all to be absolutely as similar as possible. With the additions and the deletions you see here. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 places that I propose not to modify, because they already use that specific language. One of the things I'm most interested in getting rid of is the language about, there are no reasonable alternatives available, or a literal application of the bylaw would be unreasonable, because who knows, as we were discussing tonight, what is reasonable and what is not reasonable. Somebody could always argue, I want to build an 80-story house on my property, and there is no reasonable alternative, given the 35-foot height limit, to being able to build an 80-story building, so you have to let me do that. So why even say this at all, given that the language, relief may be granted without substantial detriment to the neighborhood and without derogating from the intent and purpose of this bylaw, seems to cover it pretty nicely in a whole lot of places already, and just in general. So, because there were 22 of these altogether and 18 of them that I'm proposing to regularize in this amendment, I thought it was worth making it be its own amendment to just get them all out of the way in one fell swoop. And not confuse everybody about sending them in with everything else. Now, there were 1 or 2 spots where the wording didn't have to be quite identical. I want to wait till we get Elizabeth back to ask about the variance language, but let me find, okay, if we look at the second to last one under 7.10.9. It ends up with, provided, however, the planning board may waive a substantive requirement when the board determines that the waiver will not result in. And that's a waiver, not desired relief. Okay, now that we have Elizabeth back, I'll rope her in on this discussion. So I was just explaining that I thought if we regularized this language, people would know what we were talking about and wouldn't wonder why it's different in 22 different locations. But even though I regularized it as much as possible, I wasn't sure what to do, just how far to go with that. And if we look at the last 2 things in the proposed amendment, 7.10.9 talks about a waiver. And I don't know if a waiver is the same thing as granting relief. so I didn't know if I could change. Determines that the waiver will not result to determines that the desired relief may be granted. That could also be a question for town council.
I haven't thought about it,
Sure.
so I'd have to think about that. Generally,
Yeah.
generally, relief, so like relief from parking, is, there's a certain required number of parking and somebody
Right.
says, I don't need to provide that. I'd have to look at this and the context of the whole bylaw. So I can't answer whether
That's
relief
fair.
and a waiver are the same thing.
Okay, the more similar we can make them, I think, the better for the zoning bylaw and future planning boards in executing it and future zoning boards of appeal in executing it. But if there are a few cases where it can't be completely identical, we could still at least get close. And under variance, we currently have a language. The desirable relief may be granted without substantial detriment to the public good.
That comes from state law.
Okay, then we will keep public good.
And I think public good without nullifying, or I will have to look.
We
but I
might
think-
have to keep nullifying or as well.
I think this comes
that's-
directly from state law.
I will check state law. Okay, if it comes from state law, we'll keep it that way. Those were two bits that seemed more different from everything else than all the other ones. So, but my goal there was simply to regularize that language as much as possible. And unless there are questions, we could go on to the next one. Or comments.
I'm
No,
sorry,
no.
where are we?
I'm asking, does anyone have any questions or comments about this proposed amendment to regularize as much as possible the language of this derogation?
Um, I only have a question about your first comment
Okay,
about reasonable
Uh-huh, yep.
and options. And sometimes I feel with an application like Middlesex that was like, okay, what other options did you consider and why did you not pursue them versus the option that you did present to us? And they had a good explanation for why the athletic center couldn't go in other places or they chose not to put it there. So and it was a very reasonable explanation, or maybe someone would have come and said, because this is the one we chose, and I'd want them to go back and say, well, look at other options. So I'm not sure that the getting
Well-
rid of that language also seems to me getting rid of the thought process of, is this the most, what else could be reasonable under these circumstances? And did you pursue that?
Okay, that's an interesting point. I still have a problem with the word reasonable because it sounds like you're saying, either did the applicant investigate whether there was a compliant option, one which should not require a special permit, or does the applicant aver that this is the best among possible special permit applications, or no worse than any other possibility they investigated, but none of those are reasonable. I could phrase it a different way to get rid of this incredibly squishy word reasonable.
I'm not wedded to the reasonable, but I'm sort of wedded to the, did you weigh
Did you-
other options?
Well, that is a very interesting point, and I could look
So
at.
I don't, and
I could think about that and come back with some language to use everywhere that would be about, I see.
well, again, I'm not sure that it isn't, I haven't thought about
Yeah,
this
okay.
to know if it needs to be everywhere or if there.
So,
What I'd probably like to suggest is, I can, float this to, town council as, is this a constructive, operation for the board to to go through. And also, I think floating it to the zoning board of appeals, because 9 times out of 10, they're the ones that actually have to make that
Yeah.
finding. But to your point about, reasonable alternatives, is a better statement. Did somebody look at, compliant options? Which, kind of gets to the getting rid of that ambiguous term, reasonable options. Well, one, I may not think something's a reasonable option and somebody else may think that's a reasonable, not reasonable alternative. A compliant option, other kind or compliant alternatives. I think it's the use of the word reasonable
Yeah.
and whether using, such as compliant would be a better.
Oh, so like if Middlesex came back and said, here's a compliant option that was twice the physical area
Yeah,
because they couldn't stack things
Yeah.
to make it under 35, you look at that and be like, okay, that's probably not. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I
yeah,
wouldn't
it's
want.
not part of it, but you know what I mean, but
do that
that's,
Exercise because
it feels like a wasted effort.
that feels like a wasted effort,
Yeah.
like to take up
Yeah.
all of that space. I mean, either,
well, but that's
That's the
a
compliant option though.
But that's a process that allows a board to say, make the justification for granting the waiver. Is that,
well, yes.
Isn't that what happened on Walden Street? That,
With the
we
preliminary
had the
plan, yes.
preliminary plan that
Yeah,
this would be compliant. And this would be
Right.
the reasons why that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that gave us a basis
Okay.
upon which. Can I just ask a question? Is this a problem? Has this been identified as a problem with conducting the process of these decisions?
not the different variations of the wording, no.
Right,
The Board of Appeals has had the same conversation about, what is considered substantial, what is considered a substantial detriment to the neighborhood or without degrading from the intent and purpose of the bylaw. So it's not so much that the different sections are worded differently. It's just that conversation of a finding that between, the 6 people in the room, you could get 6 different opinions.
subjective.
Something that's, I don't find degrading to a neighborhood. Somebody else could, think, that the world's gonna end. So, that's a little extreme, but we've seen extreme
Oh,
before,
yeah.
so,
And
there's.
I like to keep out as much as possible ahead of things rather than waiting for a terrible application to come through, get approved and then change the bylaw. After the
So
first-
I'll float this, to town council and then I can also, run it past the Board of Appeals as well.
Yeah, I mean, if other people, other entities are deeply opposed to this, then it won't go forward. All right, the next article, so last year I went through and found, trivial corrections to make, misspelled words, bad punctuation, that kind of thing. To my dismay, a few got overlooked or they sort of fell off the radar screen in the process of getting the proposed amendment to the actual warrant. And so, there are a few of that kind of correction here. But mostly what I've tried to pick out are things where technically it changes the meaning of the bylaw, but anybody looking at the bylaw would say, oh, obviously that's what we meant, even if that's not what it actually says. I was trying to make it not be things that anybody had to work too hard to think about. What should it actually be? Like, there's some things I'd like to suggest, like adding sustainability, references to sustainability to the bylaw in a few places are missing. That is not included here. I thought that was a more substantive change that would require an actual discussion.
Okay.
Okay.
So I don't know if we need to go through these individually. We can
Oh,
take a look
probably
and then-
not. No.
'cause if they're all, Like, I can see that, like, assurance, like, should have been capitalized, like, yeah, I get it, but. But I can
Well,
see
I
how
mean,
that
to
would
make
come.
things good, but also we said something, constructed as a development rather than constructed as part of a development when it couldn't be constructed as a
Right.
whole development. And somewhere where we said that something should be partially a portion of something should be partially located,
Yeah.
pick one, and it's basically along those lines, but people, when they actually get a chance to read this, may.
It adds clarity, which is
Yeah,
good.
and I think there's some cut and paste errors here where something was copied from some other section and not updated, and these things happen. There was actually, let me ask you about one thing, which is under 11.1.1. Right now, it says the building inspector, upon a written complaint of any citizen, shall institute appropriate action. And I was going to suggest we change that to resident. But you could also say that's too substantive for this article. Forget it. We'll take it up some other year if ever.
Interesting question.
I think this might be one to pass by, the moderator, because it looks to me like people will have to look at each of these.
Oh, some people on town council will have to look at each of these, and I'm sure the moderator would want to look at each of these.
Well, but I think,
But we could also strike some of them if they were thought to be too controversial.
When you say cut and paste errors, what do you?
Okay, well, for a cut and paste error, take 6.2.6. Where we talk about with the exception of uncovered steps and ramps or the construction of walls and fences. Well, the previous item in the zoning bylaw refers to is talking about constructing walls and fences.
What do you mean previous item?
6.2.5. Which does not appear in this amendment because there's nothing wrong with it.
Okay.
The previous one was talking about construction and it mentioned the construction of walls and fences. But this one is talking about measuring. You don't measure the construction of walls and fences. You measure the walls and fences. And I think somebody just copied and pasted the construction of because it was easier and these things happen.
It's all gonna depend on what got submitted to the Attorney General.
Oh,
So
no, I think we probably submitted the wrong thing to the Attorney General.
I
and
don't,
asked
not,
it through town
I
meeting.
am not 100% confident.
Neither am
of
I.
that. So,
Neither am I, because I found something else which is not included here, which was clearly just somebody's finger slipped while they were touching the zoning bylaw and a sentence got deleted, half a sentence got deleted. One line got deleted, and I betcha that it was not voted by town meeting. It's just.
what section's that?
I emailed you about it. You haven't seen it yet because it was 5 seconds before the meeting. Wait, maybe I haven't emailed about it yet.
Oh,
Crap.
okay.
I will email you about that one.
Okay.
And 10.3.4.4, there's a problem where it refers to section 10.3.4. In a way that makes absolutely no sense, because we're inside 10.3.4. You can't cross-reference it as being something you're outside of when you're inside of it. And I think we must have renumbered sections at some point and just overlooked renumbering that within the zoning bylaw. I'm hoping that we'll take a closer look at that one.
You can reference your own section.
It
I
doesn't make sense under this.
I know what she's
You
talking
can,
about.
but it doesn't make sense in this particular
Unless
circumstance.
it's missing the word this
Yeah.
in this section, whatever, but I don't know.
It's just in addition to the provisions contained in the parent section. the provisions of this subsection shall apply. That's,
Oh, yeah,
that makes no sense.
yeah, probably right.
Well, then oh, okay, I
But it's,
can't,
but again, you
so-
got, it's.
so
gonna take-
But we
Again-
can't go over every little detail in this meeting. I'm just trying to give you an idea of the
Yeah.
approximate things that are in here.
um, I thought we fixed all the insures.
I
The
thought so too,
insurance.
but I somehow, one or two, I did a search of the documents, so I don't know how I could have missed these.
Well, Heather hasn't finished updating the zoning bylaw. I mean, we just got approval from the attorney. So
I hand copied everything over and I could have screwed up.
I doubt it, but,
Yeah,
but to
that's
Linda's,
okay.
to Linda's point,
Mhm.
a lot of these, yeah, I would have to talk to moderator and town council about how a warrant article would be established. Cause a lot of these are, contextual to other. Like, just to read this section, you can't read this section on its own without knowing what was happening before it. So again, it may be a really, really long warrant article if the whole section has to be referenced.
I took the exact language from last year where it said, where a portion of a section is quoted, other sections shall remain unchanged. And I followed last year's style. But it's possible that the moderator or town council may say, in some of these cases, we have to quote more.
It
Yeah.
may be. Yeah, I'm just not sure. I'd have to go through.
Yeah.
Some of these, like instead of to of, I don't think that's, most people don't even, recognize that level of grammar correction. So,
Yeah.
I don't think those will be problems, but
Ones with the internal class reference is probably gonna be here.
yeah.
I could also take this, by the way, and split it up into two articles, one that would have the same style of things from last year that easily slid onto the consent calendar, and one where they were not quite that obvious.
That may work too.
And of course, the board can declare that this is too hard, we have too much work, and we're not gonna correct the zoning bylaw,
It's more of a staff
that too.
council concern, I would think,
Well,
more than anything
If
else.
staff
I'd be
and
like,
council
are
came
we-
to us and said, you gotta be kidding, then the board would,
That's more my, like,
yeah.
us reviewing this and saying, oh yeah, it should be are instead of is, like, that's one thing, but adding it onto the pile that Elizabeth is dealing with is a different level of.
Yeah,
Seems like seems like. It, I don't know how to say this, but. An R and is nothing, but sometimes changing a word changes the.
Oh, it does, and
It
that's
does,
why,
absolutely,
yeah.
town council would have to go.
And look
over-
at it,
yeah.
Over.
Because-
all of
The
this.
town
Someone
could also-
developed this in the past and. Are you saying that there are. There's significant enough. Egregious.
Well, I wouldn't say egregious, but there is a difference between using the word or and using the word and
okay, yeah.
in zoning.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, I don't think changing from an is to an are is different, but, changing, in the wireless district, new tower shall be located 1,000 feet on a horizontal plane of the structure. It says to the structure of an existing, changing of to, I don't know if that changes the meaning of it or not, right?
But they're definitely meaning changing things in here. I'm looking for it now. There's one where we say tower, comma, or communication structure, and that makes it mean that makes it mean any kind of tower, regardless of whether it has anything to do with communication or not. And that's clearly not what people meant when they wrote the bylaw. We didn't mean to control what you do with your corner of your castle. But that's what it says.
Okay, so
That's another, I'll take that up
Another-
separately. Yeah, and if the, you know, the town could say, the moderator, the select board, or town council could say, we can't afford town council's time, so forget the whole thing. And then that would be the way it would be.
Is there a
I
way to
understand my
just
thought.
identify?
I think it's also trying to fashion something that can be approved,
Yeah,
you know, so.
which is why I tried to go to, for the thing, I mean, there are some things I really think that we should undertake to clean up the zoning bylaw, but they would require significantly more work, and I didn't think that that was a possibility at this time.
I'm sorry.
No, maybe what I was gonna say was, is there a way to just identify the things that could possibly change the meaning? As opposed to, is there, or something that's just grammatical? There's not so many of these to look at.
Oh, right,
But
well,
maybe that's what you've already done.
well, no, but like I said, I could split this up into the ones, except the problem is a lot of the grammatical ones do technically change the meaning,
I think I'll just,
yeah.
I'll let this percolate in my brain.
I think it's something for everybody to look at and decide what, yeah. And then the last agenda item was liaison updates. I guess wasn't a spot for a planner report. I don't know if you had anything to add, like.
No, but I do think the West Concord Advisory Committee, is a consensus to come to the board's meeting on October 29th or 26th. 29th, yeah.
I think.
So. 29th. So that's on the schedule. And, finally got a contract, with the consultant to start working with the board on, looking at the combined business residence district. So if you want to wait till you have a full board member, if there's, other than Mark Giddings, because he's already chugging through parking. You know, if there's somebody who would like to,
I wanted to do combined business residents early, I mean, don't let me take it away from somebody, but
I don't think.
kind of been planning on it for.
I'm not sure there's anybody that wants to arm wrestle you for that one, so, okay, so, yeah, so we're gonna try and set, something up. Emily is going on vacation. I think. Yeah, for 3 weeks. So right now it's gonna be getting all of the GIS data layers, to her team and coordinating that, so I'll loop you in the next round.
Great,
Yeah.
lovely.
Excellent. Did anyone have any liaison updates they'd like to share? Or
I don't know if you want me to say anything about MCI. Elizabeth?
Mhm.
No.
Go right ahead. I was not at the workshop, DCAM workshop
I
last week,
was.
so.
Oh, okay. I thought they did an excellent job, presenting, some overview of the prison property, and the major purpose of the meeting was to get the first round of public comment, and questions. I don't think there were any surprises.
There was one, which was that there was so little public comment.
Yeah, well, it was very polite. It was very concording and very polite commentary. And I think there was no project to comment on or information about direction. There was a general discussion of time frame, which would be very long. So I think there was not much to argue over. There was a little bit of advocacy for people's interest or thoughts.
And there was a public survey which sadly closed
Yeah.
Sunday night. I spent the weekend writing a overly long submission.
Okay.
And I wondered if the lack of public comment might be partly that a bunch of people said, I'll just fill out the survey online and not talk in the meeting.
I don't know.
I doubt it.
The only public
DCAM
comment I got related to that, people
Yeah.
were surprised that public comment closed so quickly before people actually found out about it.
Oh,
So
It was a very short timeline to
Yes.
submit the answer. It
that's,
was.
I was at an event yesterday or the day before where people were barely found out about it after it closed and were kind of surprised that it was like maybe a week.
Well, no, it was much less than a week because the forum
Like,
was,
it
what
wasn't-
night was the forum?
It wasn't even in like the ridge or it was like.
Now, people could send a comment directly to DCAM and they could send a comment to Concord's task force, which I intend to
So
forward my comment on.
people can send a comment to the advisory board.
Yeah,
yeah, anytime.
Yeah, at any
Yeah.
time.
But, yeah, but I'll give the.
And that,
feedback.
and they will be provided to DCAM.
Yeah.
but actually it would be interesting if the advisory board undertook to publish a short squib in the bridge, get a letter or something saying, isn't it nice that we had this forum? For anyone who wasn't able to submit a public comment before the survey closed, you're so welcome to send it here. Because that would satisfy or at least offset some of the comments that might, gosh, we got less than a week
Well,
on this
I
survey.
can convey that to our meeting coming up on Monday.
Yeah,
Because I'm sure we'll have a review of
Yeah.
of the DCAM meeting. So I'll say that some people were disappointed. I have no idea because it went to DCAM, one, what kind of response they received, and two, in what fashion or form they will share that with the advisory board. We just don't know yet.
but you could ask for it, but.
Well, we have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
We
you
asked
haven't
a
met,
lot.
you haven't met.
We haven't met since then.
Yes, too.
It's gonna take them a little while to distill everything, and I imagine it'll provide a summary and all the raw data to anybody who wants it, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I don't think there were many surprises
I
that came
agree.
out there in terms of comments.
Mhm.
So, and the thing is that the next meeting, will be at the League of Women Voters, first Friday in November. So I think maybe if people, didn't respond, they'll realize that this is, a series. I mean, given that the next meeting is, weeks, not months away, so maybe they just said, well, I'll have another opportunity.
DCAM rightly told people that the sooner you get your comment in, the more of an effect it will have on the process, and I wonder how many people, it's hard to know, what do they mean by soon? Do they mean soon like this month or soon like this year? It's all very unclear to the public. I would think it's unclear to me.
Probably this year is.
That's the sort of thing that might be nice to convey, like it at the first Friday or
Yeah,
something.
I mean, they're just
Yeah.
at the point of employing consultants
Mm.
to begin a visioning process that itself will take, months, if not longer. So
Yeah.
so soon, I think they were just saying thank you to the people who came to this first meeting where there was really not a great deal of new information
Mm.
provided.
My liaison report can be that the CPC got far fewer applications this year than last year, but we have not met to look over them yet.
Did you get your copies?
No, ooh, I could pick it up tonight? Yeah, that would be lovely.
And why do you speculate on why that might be?
I do not.
Okay.
I have no clue. Maybe it was everybody was so diligent at getting things in last year that they've run out of stuff, or maybe everybody is too
shovel their
busy
trucks.
dealing with the 250th in April and surrounding times that it's just too much. Who knows?
I don't have anything else. So if nobody else does, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for coming and thank you all online.